Hi, I'm Owen of Trek and Lifestyle, and that's the number one question we get about our Airstream. How did you get your Tundra to tow it like a dream? Well, today I'm going to do my best to answer that question and give you the 6 things that we did both to our truck and our RV to make that happen. And if you'll stick around to the end, Lynn and I will come back and talk to you about our experience of going from van life to trailer life and some of the ups and downs. But now, let's get out to the truck and I'll tell you what we did to it. I'm sitting in our 2022 Toyota Tundra pickup truck that we love. We tried a lot of things to make this tow like a dream. Most of those things didn't help at all, and we'll talk about some of those at the end of the video. But the 3 that did, a little air, a little rubber, and a little topper. So when you're riding in this Toyota Tundra pickup truck, one of the things you'll notice is that the ride is really comfortable. It's soft. The suspension is just great, but that doesn't equate to be something that's really good for towing and keeping it from swaying. So one of the first things we did was we added the Tundra Ride Improvement Package to this truck. So the Tundra system really just replaces the stock bump stops that are underneath the rear axle there with something that's a little more substantial and adds a little more cushioning when you put the weight of the trailer back there. And adding that fixed both the sag when we hook up to the trailer as well as the roll that happens when we're going through sharp turns or making turns out into interstates or out of driveways and things. So it was a really semi-inexpensive thing to add that made a huge difference in how well this truck tows. Next, we added the smart cap from RSI to the back of our truck. And even though that's not really going to help specifically with sway itself, it does help reduce some of the buffeting that happens. It seems to reduce the drag a little bit, but mainly what it does, it allows us to move those heavy things that were either on the back of the RV or inside of the RV to over the axle of the truck, making it better to go down the road and reducing the amount of weight that's in the trailer. It helps significantly. Not everything that we did with our tow vehicle and the RV was free, but this next one was. We simply maxed out the PSI for the tires on the Toyota Tundra. That helped a lot by making it have a stiffer ride. It cornered better, and it seemed to help alleviate some of the sway that was happening, even if we made other mistakes. And one thing we did inside of the truck was to turn off something that I absolutely love about the truck, the lane centering and the lane keep assist that's built into this thing. But what I found was this. When we weren't towing, it does a really good job of keeping you from going over the center line and keeping you from going off the side of the road. And it doesn't do the ping pong thing back and forth, and I loved it. But what I found when I was towing and it had lane assist on is I would go close to the center line. It would correct that and move it over to the middle of the lane like you would want it to do. But it would do that a lot more aggressively than I would have done if I were on the steering wheel. I would try to be smoother because the RV might start swaying, and I'm aware of that. The truck's not. So it would correct and it would move me back into the center. That really quick action would also sling the trailer around, so I would get some whip on the back of the trailer. That would push it over further into the right-hand side of the lane close to the edge. Guess what it would do then? It would correct it back, which would swing it back to here. And I don't know, it's just something that eventually I got tired of that happening and I turned it off. And speaking of turning things off, I also turned off the automatic sway correction that's built into the Toyota Tundra. Because here's what would happen. It would notice that it had just whipped the trailer around, and it would also start feeling that it was swaying, and it would start correcting. But that would put us further over here. It would correct to go back into the middle of the lane, and those two systems together seemed to be fighting against each other, and they were doing one thing that made me kind of red-faced all the time, and that was it kept me out of control. At a time when I felt like I wanted to be much more in control, when we were almost in a sway situation, it took that out of my hands. So I turned that off. Now, I have to be careful when I'm driving. I have to watch what I'm doing. I have to be smooth, and I have to pay attention and not run off the road, because that can be dangerous too. But what I found is, even on a 7,000 mile trip out west, with that off, it's a much better and enjoyable trip with those things not trying to fight against each other and fighting against me driving. Those are the things we did to the truck that worked, but now on to the Airstream Basecamp XC. These are the things that we did to make it better by adding a little air, making sure things were lined up, and by picking how we pack. It may be counterintuitive to you. You would think if you keep the air down, it's a softer ride and it may be better for the RV. But what we found is this: when we also max out the PSI on the tires on the trailer, everything is better. It doesn't sway as much. It doesn't seem as top heavy. It seems more connected to the road, and it reduces the amount of sway that we get in almost every situation. And we had the tires and the wheels on this RV both aligned and balanced. Made a huge difference. Next, pick how you pack. What we learned is, if it's really, really heavy, put it in the bed of the truck and hopefully even right over the axle of the truck. If you can't do that and it's heavy, put it where I'm sitting now, underneath the bench seat in this Airstream Basecamp, near the nose of the trailer. And keep as many of the heavy items as you can, either here or ahead of the axle. And if we do that, that seems to almost always reduce or completely eliminate sway. And unlike vans that we've had in the past, how much sway you have seems to be impacted by the amount of water we carry with us in both the fresh tank and the black and gray tank. So when we're leaving a campsite, we'll only put maybe a third a tank of fresh water, and we'll make sure that the black and gray is empty. This Airstream Basecamp is so far under the capabilities of our Tundra, we in no way thought we'd ever need to have a weight distribution system. But when we started getting sway, it was one of the first things that we purchased, thinking that that would just alleviate it. What we purchased was the Anderson weight distribution system. We'd had Anderson products in the past and we've used them and we loved them. So we thought the way this is designed is genius. We added it to this RV. But even though it does seem to help, it's not one of those things that we've added to this camper that can overcome the fact that it is a single axle trailer. If we load it incorrectly, well, it's going to sway. That may help reduce it some, but if we get into a white knuckle situation, it's not the thing that's going to keep it from continuing to sway. Well, those are the things that we did to the truck and the RV to make it tow like a dream. In fact, we just got back from a 7,000 mile trip out west with this combination, where not only did it not sway, most of the time we didn't even know it was back there. Now, before I go, I want you to know that I'm not an expert at this, and my advice on what we did, hopefully it'll help you. I'm not telling you to go max out your tires. I'm not telling you to get an Anderson weight distribution hitch. I'm just simply telling you the 6 things that we did that made this thing tow like a dream. But it wasn't always like that. In fact, Lynn and I are going to sit down now and tell you some of the stories and some of the horror tales of what happened to us when we were realizing that even though this thing doesn't weigh very much, it can be a nightmare to tow.
Somebody wants to come out and say hello.
Hey, baby. Hey. Does towing hey, I know. You don't mind the towing part of the truck at all, do you? You don't worry about anything, but so I can't tell you how many times I heard, how in the world can we have such a problem pulling this thing when there's a freaking Subaru over here in the next campsite pulling one?
Yeah, we watched a lot of videos just trying to figure out, the best way to tow with it. And, he kept saying, let's buy another truck, or we need to do this, we need to do that. And I'm going, there's people that are pulling this thing with a
Honda Odyssey.
Yeah, just regular SUVs and Subarus and stuff. There's no way this Tundra should be having this much problem.
Yeah.
But it did.
It did for sure.
But I think some of it was our fault too.
I think so.
I think putting the bikes on the back.
Yeah, we used to have, if you followed us for a long time, we're called Van Trekking Lifestyle for a reason. We've had vans. We've always had these tow hitches back behind there. We put a bike rack up there, and we'd throw our big heavy bikes up, and everything was fine. So for the Airstream base camp, they make a third-party tow hitch that you can put on the back of it. That'll solve that for us, and I ordered it. And
we've seen people, we watch videos of people using it, and people, how to put it on, and Owen put it on himself.
You cringe when I cut a hole in the bumper. And,
yeah, I did.
Yeah. But we put it on, and that extra weight back there, that far away from that single axle, it had days where nothing happened. It had days where it was fine, and we loved having them with us, but we also had days like coming back from the Keys through Miami that I thought we were going to flip. It actually almost got sideways to the point that we stopped, and you could joke and say we changed our underwear, but we stopped and tightened up the weight distribution as much as we could, and we knew something had to change. And so that situation, though, I think it almost put us into the point where we thought we're going back to van life, because
it's just too much trouble.
You can't worry about that much. On this trip out west, Lynn and I took turns driving because towing was a breeze, right? It never swayed on you one time, did it?
I don't think that year I drove at all in Florida, just because he was having so much problems with it.
And if you passed a semi or a semi passed you, it was always going to squirrel all over the place. And so, but like you said, I think that was our fault. I think we needed to learn to pack things so that they were more efficient and packed in a way that worked with a single axle trailer like that.
Right. So there was a learning curve there. I mean, we stopped doing the bikes, but then we still had a little bit of.
We'd fill it up with fresh water because we knew, hey, we need the fresh water when we get to the next place. So we're going to boondock, and all that weight sloshing around with the single axle made a huge difference. And another thing we thought about doing, and Lynn just alluded to it a little bit, was, you're going to always have trouble unless you get a 3/4 ton truck, an F-250.
A lot of people told us that.
We really never really said all the reasons we wanted to switch away from van life, but since we're not traveling as much, the camper we have, we wanted to put less money in the tow vehicle because we just aren't traveling nearly as much. So,
and we don't need that big of a truck other than just when we're traveling.
So putting 40% more money into an F-250 over a 150 or a half-ton truck, it just didn't make sense to us.
And plus, people are pulling it with a Subaru.
I know. So why do you need a 3/4 ton truck? This thing weighs a little over 4,000 pounds whenever your dog and everything else is in it. So it's our dog.
But she doesn't. We don't pull Maggie back in the trailer.
Really.
She rides in the truck.
So, but it doesn't weigh anything, and so part of the problem is just that it is so light that if you don't pack it in a way that's efficient, any mistake you make is amplified because there's not a lot of weight there to mess with. If you've got so much back behind the axle, there's not a lot of weight, and the extra weight is just going to slingshot it around. But
so did you tell everybody what you did to fix it?
I did.
Okay. Well, right now it's working perfectly.
So don't touch a thing, huh?
So don't touch it. Don't watch any more videos, or everybody that comments, don't listen to him because he's going to do whatever you say. Yeah. But it is, every vehicle's different and every trailer's different. And I think, you're going to have a different experience than we've had. And, if one of these things, could possibly help you, that's the reason why we wanted to do this video. Yeah. A lot of people have asked us this question, but, if just one thing that we did, we could pass along to you, that's why we do these videos.
Yeah, yes, for sure. And you're in a van and you see some of the advantages that we have whenever we tow a small trailer like this. And there are advantages, but there are disadvantages, and figuring this out is one of them. Yeah. And we're living proof that you can. We're not going to say we're always going to be in an Airstream base camp or in a trailer. I think if we ever had to do this over again, I probably would go with a tandem axle trailer because it just makes things a little less iffy when something goes wrong.
But they're bigger. You know,
But
we
they're bigger.
wanted something
You're right.
smaller. So
See, there's always a reason.
there's not a perfect
There's not a
RV,
perfect
you know.
RV. There's not a perfect truck. There's not a perfect camper. You just have to make the sacrifices to make it work for you. So
We do hope you learned something this week from this video. And if you do have any other ideas, I was just kidding a while ago, please put them in the comments.
For sure.
If we don't use them, there's always somebody else out there that could possibly, that could work for them. So we appreciate you tuning in.
what's going to happen later this week? Christmas.
Oh yeah, Christmas.
Did you not get me anything?
Guess I got to go shopping.
I know later this won't be relevant, but we really want you to know that you guys are a gift that we appreciate. We hope you have a wonderful and a blessed and a happy Christmas together. This will be our last video until we leave out in the first couple weeks in January to head down to Florida again. And we'll take you along as we travel down into that area. But it's been a good year to be with everyone, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has. It has. We kind of stopped for a little while and came back, and
Stronger
it's
than
been
ever.
fun.
You make it fun.
You
We
do.
appreciate you. Merry Christmas. We'll see you next year.